Father Chris OFM, aka Pilgrim Padre, here with today's reflection for Holy Thursday. Today, we would normally be focusing on three things during the Mass of the Lord's Supper, and that is, of course, the Eucharist, primary. Second, the priesthood. And third, service. I wanted to focus a little bit on the Eucharist first and foremost in today's reflection. The Church didn't invent the Eucharist. It's not something that only Catholics celebrate. It's something that comes from the Passover Seder. The Passover sacrifice in and of itself was a thanksgiving sacrifice. That's what the Eucharist is too. And if we look back into Jewish writings, we see the rabbis, in the time of the rabbis, there was a mention that they said that in the time of the Messiah, all of the sacrifices would go away except for one, the thanksgiving sacrifice, or the Todah in Hebrew. Passover, which we hear about in the first reading today, is a Todah sacrifice. It is a thanksgiving sacrifice. It is anticipating the event. So the first Passover was a thanksgiving anticipating the deliverance of Israel, and then it was instituted as a memorial to constantly remember the deliverance of Israel from slavery in Egypt. The first Eucharist was also anticipating the deliverance of God's people from sin in Good Friday, that is, Jesus' death and resurrection. In fact, Jesus ties Good Friday to his Passover, that is, his Last Supper, by not finishing the amount of cups of wine. Instead, he finishes that on the cross. It's on the cross that he has that final sip of wine and completes this new Passover Thanksgiving sacrifice. And so then he hands on to the church. He says, "Do this in remembrance of me." He hands on to the church a new institution of a new Passover, a new Thanksgiving sacrifice. Because he is the Messiah now, all the other sacrifices have gone away because sin has already been atoned for by the one sacrifice of Christ on the cross. And every source of life also flows from that. And so daily, weekly, except for Good Friday, right? We celebrate this new Eucharist, this new Thanksgiving sacrifice, the Eucharist. So this is where this comes from. These are the Jewish roots of our Thanksgiving sacrifice. And I think it's important that we keep that in mind because we are celebrating at the same time this year, the Jewish community is celebrating Passover while we're celebrating Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and Holy Saturday and Easter Sunday. So they're lining up this year in a particular way. And so I think that that's very important as well. Are we willing to give thanks to God? The Thanksgiving sacrifice was always one of extreme praise after being saved from a major danger. Can we go back and look at how God has saved us in very important ways, whether it's from eternal damnation, whether it's from our sin, whether it's in reaching into our misery at times and coming to us with consolation, or freeing us from a dangerous situation, or protecting us, or not allowing us to fall into danger. For today, we want to think of all of the ways that God has been blessing us and to give thanks and to unite that to whatever way we're able to unite that to the Lord's Passover, to the Lord's first Eucharist, and that is whether it's through TV, whether it's through our reading of the readings, whatever way it might be. We want to take some time to just really thank God. If you have some time to take a look at some of the Thanksgiving Psalms in the book of Psalms. One in particular is 136, Psalm 136, or Psalm 116. Some of these are very beautiful, and we want to keep in mind that our praise can be an act of thanksgiving to God.